Our next big adventure is just around the corner. In part 1 of this series, we decided, let's go fly the Caribbean. We blocked out the calendar, including a buffer for weather, laid out our flight schedule, made sure the paperwork was coming together for the many border crossings, and came up with tentative routes for each leg. We even flew the visual and instrument approaches on the sim. As I'm speaking, we're entering the final week before departure, and of course getting increasingly focused on studying the weather forecasts and how we need to have backups upon backups for all of our planning to date. But first, a brief discussion of weather fronts. In North America, the primary direction of travel for weather fronts is from the west coast to the east coast. So let's see what happens as we're traveling in that same eastbound direction. The fronts, again, move from west coast toward the east coast at perhaps something like 600 miles a day, varying widely in their frontal passage speed. Our small general aviation aircraft, depending upon how many hours we'd like to spend in the air during the day, we can probably go 1,000, let's say 1,200 miles per day. So a strategy for our eastbound travel might be what we could call a follow-along travel. That is, we depart 1 or 2 days after the front, and we fly more or fewer hours to adjust to the movement of the weather front. Things might be a little more interesting traveling the other way. Now the fronts are moving toward us, still at that same 600 miles a day as a crude average, and we now have a closing speed of like 1,800 miles a day. So for westbound travel, we might want more of a drive and duck strategy. That is, depart a few days before the front were to arrive, fly more or fewer hours to adjust, and make sure that we land, get safely in bed, and let that front pass as we sleep. With the front having passed, we now wake up with our eyes on the subsequent front on its way toward us. Let's examine some forecasts for 1 week out. First, how about thunderstorm risk? Say plus or minus a day of our target Thursday departure. No red flags for the first day. It is winter, so cloud bases are of interest. Maximum terrain to cross for day 1 is over the Tehachapi's. And with a chance of IMC, we now look at freezing level. And indeed have some concern in the Tehachapi Mountains. In addition to icing risk from the clouds themselves, what about precipitation? Here's what's forecast for Thursday morning. In the same time frame, but rather than the European model, the US model. They both show the next front arriving the Bay Area, on Wednesday night. What does Wednesday morning look like? As forecast, and I emphasize here, 1 week out, an early Wednesday departure would get us out ahead of the front quite nicely. Thus far, we have a departure plan A and a plan B for backup. The iterative process of weather analysis continues right up to departure and most definitely continuing en route. So glad to have you along for this flying adventure. Stay tuned.